And a great week ahead. Francis Nelson, QC. Well, not actually QC, it's KC. Ma'am? Yes. Ma'am, I can't stand up, but I do welcome you to the dining room table. Chairman of the Parole Board of South Australia, and a wonderful, wonderful lady. This whole thing, by the way, if you look around, you think to yourself, it's a work in progress. Your Honour, a work in progress.
Inviting me,
it's a great pleasure.
Enjoy our discussions.
Yeah, and over a lot of years, because I was trying to work out the other day just how many years you have been the chairman of the Parole Board, and it's quite a few.
Too many, really.
I don't. I really just don't know how you cope with it.
I don't think you ever get desensitised. You just learn to manage it better.
But you'd have to be careful not to be desensitised, wouldn't you?
I think so. I think it would be fatal because we have to deal with victims, and I think that's the hardest part of the job, really. Because
this is how it came up when I thought to myself, thinking out loud, it would be wonderful to get you on the program. And you can talk to Francis Nelson, KC, if you'd like to, 0491 65 68 60. It came up because we were talking about, in the podcast, this event where allegedly two 14-year-old kids started a fire in Woolworths which took out virtually the whole shopping centre, and they are apparently out on bail. Well, I mean, presumption of innocence and all that sort of thing is perfectly reasonable. But you think to yourself, if there's anything over the years that has been more contentious than bail and parole on my programs, I can't think of it. You're never going to get, in the court of public opinion, people to agree. They'll always think that you're too lenient or too strict. But there you sit. You must somehow try to please everyone and do some good at the same time.
Well, I don't think we try to please everyone because that's impossible. But we do try to do very careful risk assessment, which is a different exercise to a judge sentencing. They have a different process. But we have to look at whether releasing someone on parole will create a risk to the community.
Well, how can you ever know?
You can never know 100%, but you can, I think, have a reasonable idea as to whether the risk could be safely managed in the community. So we've just filed our annual report, and when we looked at the statistics, 80% of the people we released completed their parole satisfactorily. So that's really good, and it's a much higher rate than any other state in Australia.
Because, of course, if somebody does fall short, that will get front page. You will never, ever see that sort of statistic that you just mentioned. It'll, if it bleeds, it leads. Old journalistic phrase.
But I suppose you can understand that because people want to feel safe.
Yeah.
And I often think that the media make them feel unsafe.
Yes.
And they sensationalise cases which have some level of notoriety.
Yeah.
And to some extent you can understand that.
Yes.
But no, they don't publish the good news stories.
No. There was one story that also came up, but going back a little while, it was 5 young men, I think they were Somalian, but 5 young men in Hindley Street. They got into mischief. It was discovered that 2 of them were out on bail, and blow me down if when they went before the court for this particular transgression, they didn't get bail again. Now, are some judges somewhat famous for their leniency or somewhat out of touch with what the public think should happen?
I think it's a different process. You see, we actually get the prisoner in.
Yeah.
And we talk to that prisoner across the table.
Yeah.
And to a level, we interrogate them. We don't just accept the version that is given to us. So, I've been counsel in many cases, and you do your best for your client and you don't mislead the court, but you do present the best case you can, and that's what a judge hears.
Yes.
So it's not as though they're having a robust discussion and ascertaining for themselves the level of risk that prisoner presents. They hear submissions from experienced advocates and from the prosecution, and they evaluate what they should do on that basis. But what they're doing is quite a different exercise to the parole board. Well, I think we're the only parole board in Australia who actually interviews people in person. Most of them decide on the papers.
You would have quite a remarkable, after all of these years, what is it, 40 years?
40 years and 2 weeks, I think. I often say I've been in this system longer than the average murderer.
And I remember you once telling me that the reason you keep on doing it is that nobody else will.
There isn't a queue from here to China to do the job, I can promise you.
And you've been through, how many governments left and right would you have seen in those years?
Several.
Yeah.
And I've lost track of the number of ministers we've had.
Yeah. How do you cope with that? Do they interfere?
No. They do tend to take the view that the further they are from parole, the better it is.
Yeah.
Which is quite sensible.
Probably in every sense of the expression. Yeah. Yeah, there was a case involving this fellow. I had it over there. It was
You moved it for your tea.
Oh, a move of my tea. A terrorist.
Oh, there's a guy in Sydney.
The guy in... Oh, is that it?
No, that's John Lett.
Yeah. Anyway, it doesn't probably... Oh, that's him, yeah. Now, that would be a very, very vexed question for anyone to probably try and sort through. This guy was arrested. Whether he actually went to jail or not, I don't know. He was held in detention as a terrorist for 7 years, I think. Then, for some strange reason, his citizenship that had been removed was given back to him. And, you'd have to scratch your head and think to yourself, well, if this guy was a threat, a terrorist threat to the community, I think it was Tony Abbott who took his citizenship, why would somebody else come in and say, and I'm talking about the High Court, and I'd love to know where he got the money to go and fight his case in front of the High Court. That would not be cheap, I wouldn't imagine.
Well, it might have been legal aid, though.
Oh, God.
There's a story there.
Well, with my bung eye, I probably won't be able to read it. But I'd like to get his name.
His name's the...
Anyway, look, it doesn't matter. Just in principle, I suppose we don't have the kind of terrorist problems that they would have, say, in the United States of America.
No, but we have seen in recent years a number of people who are in prison for terrorism offences. So it is gradually creeping in.
And you'd have to treat that a hell of a lot more seriously, I suppose, because in the public eye, it's a very, very important issue to keep the communities safe from people who literally want to wreck it.
Well, we don't have to grant parole.
No.
And I can think of 3 people who committed terrorism offences who applied for parole, and we refused them. We thought they were too great a risk. But they will come to the end of their sentence.
Yes.
They might be put on an extended supervision order, but I don't know how effective that would be. But the previous federal government was making a lot of decisions to deport people who weren't Australian citizens
Yes.
if they committed serious offences.
And if they'd lost their citizenship, would that mean that they could be kicked out of the country?
Yes. Once they were released from prison, they would go straight into detention and they'd be deported.
See, I can't see how you could ever be totally sure that a Bali bomber or somebody else who was radicalised would ever be somehow civilised. And would prison do that? Or would prison make him more angry, more radical?
It would depend if he engaged in any intervention in prison. And generally speaking, people of that persuasion don't, because they're convinced that they're right.
Yes.
If he, and there's one woman I think we've dealt with, but mostly they're men, if he engaged in a program just for the sake of it,
Yeah.
we'd work that out very quickly.
Yeah.
But, you know, at a lower level, we've had a number of people from Afghanistan deported who've committed nasty acts of domestic violence, people who've committed murder, rapists, not all from Afghanistan, but some from Europe and some from Asia. And I don't know what the present federal government's policy is, but certainly under Scott Morrison, they were very determined to remove anyone they thought fell into that category.
It would be the ultimate sanction, wouldn't it? You cross the line in this country, and we will move heaven and earth to get you out of this country. We'll get rid of you. That's an impressive weapon to use.
It is, and it's not always used judiciously, I think, because we've had a couple of people who came here aged 2 or 3, so they have no connection in Europe at all, no family, no prospect of an income and nowhere to live. So if they're deported, they get off at the other end. They've got no home, they've got no money. What are they going to do? I'm not sure that that's very appropriate. They've both killed someone. And in both cases, we've looked at them and thought they really are safe to be paroled. So I think I agree it's a weapon, and I understand that it's probably a useful one, but I think there needs to be a bit more care looking at the individual case.
How does the parole board work? How many members do you have? Do you have people who advise you, or does it all fall on your shoulders?
No, we have 12 members, and we usually sit a panel of 3, and I have 2 deputy presiding members. I take the life sentence prisoners, the prisoners who've committed the more serious crimes, and all the extended supervision orders, of which we now have 143. So we probably supervise overall 1,400 people at any one time. We get a lot of information. We get the sentencing remarks, we get the institutional case notes, we get any psychiatric or psychological reports. In the case of life sentence prisoners, we review them annually throughout their sentence. So we have a lot of information.
Yeah, I suppose you can have too much information, but do you maybe rely upon your judgment of character? Do you look at somebody and listen to him or her and make a judgment?
I think ultimately it's our decision, so we need to explore it thoroughly.
Yeah.
And we don't always agree with the recommendation.
How many times have you got it wrong?
Oh, I don't know. Several, I would think. You can't always predict what future behaviour will be like.
No, you can't. No. And I would think that criminals could be, over a period of time, very, very deceptive, very clever.
I think my board is pretty good at working that out. Prisoners come in and they all know what you want to hear. So you have to drill down past that.
Is there a never-to-be-released category?
Sometimes judges don't set non-parole periods. So in the case of the Snowtown murderers, they don't have non-parole periods.
So they can be kept inside forever.
Life.
Yep.
And that's a matter entirely for the judge.
Yeah.
Some people are in indefinite detention where they've demonstrated they're unable to control their sexual impulses. But again, that's an order the court makes. And ultimately, the court may decide to release them. We don't have a say in that.
Yeah. The courts, I don't know, juries, judges can sometimes get it wrong. It must be a terrible responsibility to sort of go home at night and think, I think I'm right. I'm pretty sure I'm right, but you can't ever know, can you?
No, you can't. You can only do the best you can with the information that you have.
Yeah.
And you try to get the best information.
What?
But ultimately, things happen to people that no one has predicted, and there are situations where people become overwhelmed and they react badly. All you can do is try to work out whether, in that sort of circumstance, a prisoner has enough strength and determination not to react impulsively.
Yeah, I noticed that there was a criminal in Melbourne, and it became really a media thing and a political thing. I think his name was Denya, a notorious killer.
They've amended the legislation now so that he can't be released.
Yeah, never to be released. But it was amazing to listen to, say, 3AW, where they were putting considerable media pressure on the government to do that. It became a big deal. And if the government had said, oh, no, we'll let him out, and the fallout from such a decision would have been terrible. I mean, politically for the government. So what they did was something along the lines of, well, the media say we should lock him up for life, so we'll lock him up for life. How does that figure in the overall business of justice?
I don't think that one should be considering what the media think.
Yep.
And I've often said to parole board members, you need to be very conscious that the decision you're making is not being driven by media interest. They don't have the information, they don't have the facts, and they have a different agenda.
Yeah.
And we ignore anything in the media.
Have you seen that series that they've done on television called Bull?
No.
It's
a bit like working after hours for me, Jeremy. I might as well take a file home and read it.
I'm sure you do that. But it's about this thing called trial science, where the character in the series, he's not a lawyer, but he's a psychologist. And he has a mirror jury that he sets up when he takes on a case. And the mirror jury is pretty much the same as the jury that is picked. Because the theory of the whole thing, I think, is that you've got to get the right jury if you want to get the result you want. And it sort of leads you to believe that, there are rules. Media can't discuss the case. They can't do this, they can't do that, and they shouldn't watch the media and be led. But if a trial goes on for weeks and weeks and weeks, and it's a controversial trial, I can't imagine how you could get possibly a jury that wasn't tainted in some way.
Especially with social media now, I think. That's quite pernicious at times.
Yes.
I do think juries try very hard to get it right.
Yes.
I've always been so impressed by people who sit on juries getting, I don't know, $5 a day or something.
Yeah.
Pathetic. And they're very conscientious and they do seem to listen very carefully to the evidence. I've never felt that a jury's come in with a preconception I think they take their role very seriously.
Pretty hard if it's a sensational case and it's been all through the media. I'm thinking of this magic mushroom or this...
The woman who's just been arrested.
Yes, that is going to be an absolute media circus.
It is. A lot of those high-profile trials are.
Yeah. Interesting, though. I mean...
You know, the Brittany Higgins saga was, I think, a terrible circus. It didn't reflect well on the system.
Well, on anybody, really.
No, it didn't.
It left a lot of unanswered questions, and it continues to rattle on.
Yes, I think it's really unfortunate. But we have to work with the world as it is.
Yeah, yep. Apart from the world of law, the world of racing is something that you've been involved in for a long time. Because you were the chair of not only the Parole Board, but what was it, the Thoroughbred Racing?
Yes, I chaired it here, but I was also chair of the national body, and I was on the international body, and I was vice chair of the Asian Racing Federation.
What is it about racing that you love so much?
Well, I've always had horses.
Yes.
And I really owe my job to racing because I did my law degree, but then I had to do articles. You don't have to do that anymore. And because I didn't come from Australia and I didn't have anyone connected in the law, and I was female, it was jolly hard to get articles. So eventually I found a man who'd been hunting in the same group with whom I was hunting, and we did a deal. I worked his steeplechases in the morning before I went to work, and I rode them in point to points, and he gave me articles. So I sort of feel my career in the law I owe to racing. Otherwise, I wouldn't have got articles.
Now, do you have horses that you just love and love to ride, or do you have horses that you race?
Both.
Golly, how many have you got?
Too many, Jeremy. I've also got paddocks of old retired boys.
Oh, that's lovely of you. I think it's so sad when horses seem to have sort of gone by their, I don't know, productive or winning age. I long to think that they're given a beautiful paddock with lots of lush grass and have a fantastic retirement, but it's not always the case.
I think most do, though. People do get very close to their animals. And I think if a horse has been good to you, why can't you give it a retirement?
Yes. Do you have many winners or...?
Not enough.
Is it still a thrill?
Oh, of course. It's a real adrenaline rush.
Yeah. And do you have take a hand in the training and the picking of the jockey and the whole thing, or...?
I'd like to, but my son's the trainer, and it causes difficulty if I interfere.
Oh dear! But your lifetime of experience with such things shouldn't go to waste.
No, but it's still difficult, Jeremy.
I was looking at this, which I thought was an interesting little bit about the only triple dead heat. 1956 it was. A triple dead heat in the Hotham Handicap at Flemington. Fighting Force, Ark Royal and Pendy Sun. Or perhaps it's Pandy Sun. I'm having trouble with my eyes today. Pandy Sun. They couldn't split them. And apparently it had never happened before. A triple dead heat. I don't know whether it's happened ever again.
I can't remember one.
Ah, remarkable. There wasn't even a whisker, a nose, anything separating them. What would they do? Just split the prize money?
Yes, I think they divide the prize money for first 3 ways, and then the next horse would be designated fourth.
Yeah. Have you got anything racing in the Melbourne Cup?
No, but I do have 2 racing here on Melbourne Cup Day.
Will you tell us who they are?
Caliburn
Yes.
and Taita.
How do you name them?
I bought them already named.
And when you buy a horse, that's another judgment thing, isn't it? What do you look for?
Conformation,
By that you mean how it stands and how it...
how it's put together,
yeah,
temperament,
yeah.
form if there is any.
Which is the horse that you're most proud of in terms of your judgment and its success?
2. I trained a really good little sprinting mare called Sweet Chariot, and she was black type ultimately.
Yeah.
My only black type horse when I trained. She was tiny.
Yeah.
When she went into the barriers, she was so small she couldn't see over the top.
Golly.
And I started her first at Cheltenham as a 2-year-old, and there were 20 2-year-olds in that race. And they all came out looking enormous and muscled up, and she walked out very quietly, and everyone sneered at her, and she was 150 to 1, and she won by 4.5 lengths. But she was very consistent. She won on every metropolitan racetrack here. And she died only 2-3 years ago. She lived to 32. And my other really good horse that I remember was Manunda. I bought him for $1,000 from a solicitor whose friend had told him he was no good. He won him in a poker game, I think. And
You lawyers are a colourful lot, aren't you?
he just impressed me. There was something about him. And he was a hurdler. He was a jumper. He won the Lachelle hurdle at Flemington. He won the Harry de Young hurdle here. And then I hunted him for a few years after he retired, and he lived to 32 too, you know. That's why I'm still going to work. I've got all these old retirees I'm feeding. But, you know, I took him to Flemington not understanding it was a feature race. It was 4,000 metres, and I thought, oh, that'll suit him. And again, the vet came round, he said, I don't think I'll bother to take a sample from your horse. Sniffed at me.
What, a sample meaning that the chiggy hasn't been doped?
Yeah, no, he just took the view. He was so hopeless, you know, why would he bother? So that was a bit of fun.
And he won, I take it?
Oh, he won by 4.5 lengths, I think.
Yeah.
So that was quite exciting. Amanda Elliott's father was on the committee at the time, so he presented the trophy. I drove him over in the float with the jockey in the front seat and the children in the back seat, and they proceeded over 8 hours to try and kill each other all the way to Melbourne. So there was nothing terribly up.
Are we there yet? So if you had your time over again, would you have the emphasis on the law, or would you have the emphasis on the horses?
I think the law is a more reliable income than racing. But I have to say I've had enormous fun, and it's been a good outlet for me.
Yep.
Horses.
Yep. And Caroline reminds me that you also have Jack Russells.
I do. I do. I've had Jack Russells for years.
You Jack Russell owners stick together.
Well,
They are remarkable dogs.
they are amazing dogs.
Personality. Incredible personality.
They run the house.
Yes. And everyone in it.
So currently I have 1 and my daughter has 2.
Mm-hmm.
And they hunt in a pack.
Ah, yes.
She calls them the terrorists.
Yes.
But they're great dogs, great personalities. You know, for a small dog, there's a lot of personality.
Yeah, well, that's true. I think there is something about that. They've got a sort of a little dog syndrome, or they overcompensate for their small size or their small stature.
Don't think a Jack Russell believes it's a small dog.
Oh, no.
They'll take on anything, won't they?
No, I know. Well, it's wonderful to come, and particularly today, because I haven't mentioned this before, but today, Friday, they decided that they were going to resurface the road, Sunnyside Road up there. And in doing that, literally here where we are, it's a cul-de-sac, which one does not have access to apart from Sunnyside Road. So where did you park?
In Watuna Terrace.
Oh, God, I am sorry. That is a slight walk.
I think it drove my GPS into such a state of confusion. I refused. It kept telling me to turn into Sunnyside Road, and I couldn't.
Well, they bloody well should know, shouldn't it? After all,
Of course it should.
Yeah. I know. I love the way they sort of get angry. You can hear the voice getting angry when you just don't go the way they want you to go.
They kept telling me, turn left now.
Yeah, no.
Anyway, I got here.
And
it was a challenge.
I thank you very much for coming. I really do.
Oh, it's been a pleasure, Jeremy.
Well,
anytime.
bless your heart. And good luck with the next 40 years.
That's a terrible thought.
No, well, thank you very much. Lovely to see you.
Absolute pleasure.
Francis Nelson, ladies and gentlemen, Francis Nelson KC. Would you do me the honour, ma'am, of signing my visitor's book?
Of course.
I'd love you to do that. What a wonderful guest you are. Thanks for coming.
Do you want to make a real impact in your community? Sponsor Jeremy Cordo's The Court of Public Opinion and be a part of something special. Connect with engaged listeners, showcase your brand, and support informed discussions.
Yes, look, I've been loving watching it. It's a true breath of fresh air.
Oh, well, I'm glad you found me.
Make your mark on Jeremy Cordo's The Court of Public Opinion, where voices matter.
Jeremy, I think it's wonderful that you're able to do this because you have such wonderful history. You have a great connection with your audience. There are still many, many, many people who love you, and it's just great that you and others who may be in a similar position, who aren't working for a commercial station anymore, can do it and continue to do what they love doing, and not just for you, but for the listeners.
Sponsorship opportunities are limited. Act now and be part of the conversation.
Please join us. We'd love to have you.
Simply visit jeremycordo.com and click on sponsor.